Unit 5, Learning Target Number 8. Convert units of measurement with metric and imperial systems. So let's talk about measurement. Anytime we want to measure something, we have to have some unit by which we can measure it. So for example, as I'm looking at this screen, this is about 1 inch long. This is about 1 inch. But what does 1 inch mean to someone who doesn't know what the word inch means? An inch doesn't mean anything apart from the fact that you and I decide that it means something, and it means about this much space. That is about an inch. Now, there are lots of different standards or units by which people measure or have measured throughout history. In ancient times, they would measure with the sizes of parts of their body, like thumbs and arms and hands. These days, we like to pick a system of some kind to measure by, and we define things by words. So, we have two systems that are competing for use in the United States. We have the U.S. traditional system. The U.S. traditional system is, or the standard system, is what we call the yards and the gallons and the ounces and the feet and the pounds, etc. That is U.S. traditional or U.S. standard system. We also have the metric system. And scientists and people who use technology have a tendency to really like the metric system. And that's where you'll find things like the meter, the liter, and the gram. Now, when you first start listening to these may sound uncomfortable for you. You don't know exactly what meter is, or liter, or gram, because you've always bought things in ounces, or you've bought milk by the gallon, or you've bought fabric by the yard. You don't usually buy it by the meter. But, as I said earlier, scientists and people who deal with measurement a lot will really like the metric system because it's based on tens. And tens are really easy. The U.S. standard is kind of all over the place. What that means for you is that you have to learn both of them. You have to learn the metric system and the U.S. standard or the traditional system. And in my opinion, hopefully, sometime we're going to move over to the metric system because, as I said earlier, it is a lot easier, although you might not be as familiar with it. Let's start with the hard work first. Let's start with the U.S. standard system to begin with. And we're going to start by solving this proportion because we're going to be using proportions to solve all our measurement and conversion stuff until we get to the metric system. So we're going to use proportions to do that. So let's use this proportion here and solve it. Again, we've got two equivalent ratios. These two ratios are equal to each other. We know that 16 over 1 is equal to 40 over something. And what were our steps to solve a proportion? That was that we cross multiply first. So let's cross multiply, and we're going to get 16x, and that's going to be equal to, cross multiplying this way, 40. 16x is equal to 40. Now, to solve an equation, get x by itself by using inverse operations. The inverse of multiplication is division, so we divide by 16. 16 divided by 16 is 1, and 1 times x is just x. And then our third rule, whatever we do to the left side, we do to the right, so we have to divide 40 by 16. Now, you're going to want to get out your calculator because it's just easier that way. 40 divided by 16 is equal to 2.5. 2.5. We could have worked that out. It wouldn't have been too much trouble, but we can just work it out like that. 2.5. So we know that x up here, x, is going to be equal to 25. Now let's see how that proportion can help us. Here we have the same proportion we solved up here at the top. Now, we're going to look at a problem that matches to this proportion. At birth, a Great Dane puppy can weigh as much as 40 ounces. That is a Great Dane. That is not a puppy. That is an incredibly large dog. At birth, one of those can weigh as much as 40 ounces. So we want to know how many pounds is that. How many pounds is this gigantic dog when it's born? So to do that, we can solve a proportion. And what we do is we start with the number of ounces. So we know that they can weigh 40 ounces. 40 ounces. And we want to know the number of pounds. And the abbreviation for pounds is LB. So pounds versus ounces. So that means we need some sort of unit to convert that. Well, we know that 16 ounces is equal to 1 pound. So 16 ounces is equal to 1 pound. Now we've got our proportion set up, and our tops, the units at our top measure, and the units on our bottom match. Rather, the units on our top match ounces and ounces, and the units on the bottom match, pounds to pounds. So we can simply solve that equation, which is what we did up here. And we found out, once we did all our setting up our equation and solving it, that each puppy can weigh as much as 2.5 pounds. 2.5 pounds, little bitty puppy to gigantic dog. Let's take a look at a problem to see how we can solve some U.S. standard measurement conversions. Including the end zones, a football field is 120 yards long. So from end to end, it's 120 yards long. How many inches is that? So how many inches is the football field? We know that it is 120 yards. How many inches are in it? So let's start with what we do know. What do we know? In this case, we know that we have 120 yards. That's how big our football field is. But we don't know how many inches it is. So I'm going to use a little L here to represent length. Length in inches. So this is my variable L. All right, and what do I know in terms of yards and inches? Well, I know that because a yard is equal to 3 feet and 1 foot is equal to 12 inches, I know that a yard is made up of 3 feet that are 12 inches each, so I can multiply 3 times 12 and get 36 to find out that 1 yard is equal to 36 inches. 1 yard is equal to 36 inches. That's going to be very important to us because we're going to set that right over here. We want some sort of conversion to tell us exactly how many yards there are in an inch or how many inches there are in a yard. So in this case, we're going to match up our units. The known units will match with the known units, and the unknown units will match with the unknown units. Known to known, unknown to unknown. So we know that 1 yard is equal to 36 inches. And now we have a proportion that we can solve. 120 yards times 36 and 1 times L. So we'll cross multiply here. 1 times L is just L. And 36 times 120 is what? Well, I can do that here, but it might be a little bit quicker for me to pop up the calculator. 120 times 36 is equal to 4,320. There are 4,320 inches in a football field. That's a lot of inches. Now let's do some conversions using the metric system. The first way we'll do this is going to be just like we did with the standard units, with the U.S. standard units. We're just going to use a proportion. So let's look at our problem. There are 4 grams of sugar. 4 grams of sugar in a teaspoon. 4 grams of sugar in a teaspoon. How many centigrams is this? How many centigrams is it? So we're looking for centigrams. Well, we might want to know what exactly a centigram is, right? So if you remember, you've probably seen this before. Here is our breakdown of our different units. We try to remember this by this little mnemonic device. King Henry doesn't usually drink chocolate milk. So K is for kilo, H is for hecto, D is for deca, U is for unit, so that's just the standard, the meter, the gram, the liter, etc. And then D down below the units is deci, and chocolate is centimeter, and milk is millimeter. So you have these different units. And what you'll find is that as you go up or down, we can convert these, and we'll see this in just a minute. But for now, let's just take a look at the bottom part of this chart. 1 meter, or 1 gram, whatever you want to choose, or 1 liter, is equal to 1,000 milligrams, or milliliters, or millimeters. It's equal to 100 centigrams, and it's equal to 10 decigrams. So if you look at this really quickly, we're interested in centigrams. We're going to find out that 1 gram is equal to 100 centigrams. And we'll set up our proportion just like we did before. So this will be very important to us when we set up our proportion. Now we know that we have 4 grams. What we need to know is the number of centigrams. I'm going to use an X here for my variable. and I'm going to set up my proportion. I'll make sure that my units at the top are the same and my units at the bottom are the same. So here's my conversion right here. I've got 1 gram is equal to 100 centigrams. Now, if you notice, my units match up here, centigrams to centigrams, grams to grams, and all I have to do is solve my proportion. So I will cross multiply. X times 1 is simply x, or 1x, and we'll do that there to show you. 4 times 1 is 400. X is equal to 400. So the number of centigrams is 400. And that is how many centigrams there are in 4 grams of sugar. So there are 400 centigrams. Now, you're welcome to use that. Using proportions will always get this solved for you. You shouldn't have any trouble once you come up with your conversion. It'll be great. But let me for just a second show you something that you might find a little bit easier. Let's use our same problem, and we're going to pull out both these pieces of information here. Here is our chart, and here is something else that might be helpful for you. Here is a little ladder. Now, you might take just a second, pause the video, and jot this down and think about it for just a second. What we have is a little stair step for conversions. We have kilometers or kiloliters or kilograms at the top. The kilo is here, that's 1,000. Then all the way down at the bottom, we have milli, which is also 1,000. And then right square in the middle, we have our units right there. This will help us convert, and it gives us the instructions right up here. As we move down the chart, we are moving down and we're multiplying by 10 for every step, which means we're moving the decimal to the right. Let me show you what that means. Let's say we start off with our 4 grams. We start off with our 4 grams. Here we are. We're right here at the unit. We're at 4 grams right over here at this spot. Now, are we going up the ladder or are we going down the ladder? Well, we're going to centigrams, and centigrams are down the ladder. Centigrams are down here, so we're going from here to here, going down the ladder. So that means if we're going down the ladder, we're going to multiply 10 for every step. So we're taking 2 steps down to get to the centimeter. That means we're going to multiply by 10 twice. And of course, 10 twice is just 100. 4 grams times 100 is going to be equal to 400 grams. And you remember that's exactly what we got right here. I should say centigrams, by the way, not grams. 400 centigrams. Now, that's really helpful for us, but you know what else is really cool is that you can make it one step easier. Instead of doing this multiplication, all you really have to do is move the decimal point. Up here, our decimal point is right there. It's 4.0. All we have to do is move that decimal point 2 spaces to the right. Because we're going 2 steps down, we're moving the decimal 2 steps to the right. That gives us 400 or 400. And it works the same way if we were to choose something else. Let's say we were converting, let's say 7 centigrams, and we want to convert it to some number of, let's say, grams. Let's say we're converting grams. This time, we're going up the ladder, right? We're going up the ladder this time. We're going from centimeters to units. So we're going up the ladder. That means we're going to do what? We're going to divide by 10 for every step. But the easy thing about it is to remember that all we have to do is move our decimal to the left. If we have 7 centigrams, our decimal point is right there. It's right there, so we're just going to move it over to the left 2 times. 1 and 2, and that's going to give us 0.07 grams in 7 centigrams. So we have less grams than we have centigrams, right? Because grams are bigger, is going to be less than 1 gram in 7 centigrams. And that makes perfect sense if you think about it. Let's think about us having an apple. Let's say we have a whole apple. And what we have is slices of that apple. We have a slice of that apple. If we say centigrams, this is like our centigrams, and this is like our gram. If we say how many apples do we have if we only have this little piece right here, well, we have less than an apple. And it's the same thing down here. If we have 7 centigrams, then we have 0.07 grams. We have less than 1 gram, less than 1 apple.